See now the condition I am in. Weep with me, and weep for me, you who so control your inward feelings as that good results ensue. As for you who do not thus act, these things concern you not. But thou, O Lord my God, give ear, behold and see, and have mercy upon me, and heal me. Thou, in whose sight I am become a puzzle to myself, and that is my infirmity. This quote comes from Book 10, Chapter 33 of St. Augustine's Confessions. In it, Augustine is grappling with a profound and haunting self-awareness, one that reveals the reality and complexity of faith. As he navigates these feelings of despair and a longing for divine intervention, he admits to being perplexed by his own nature, a nature of deep internal conflict between desire and the moral imperatives he seeks to uphold. As he calls upon God, Augustine acknowledges not only his suffering, but his vulnerability. He recognizes that true healing can only come from something greater than himself. God. Or music. No, it's definitely God. Right? Allow me to restate myself. This quote comes from Book 10, Chapter 33 of St. Augustine's Confessions. Although what I've said prior could be seen as an accurate reading of this quote, it leaves out one of the most interesting, and I believe important, pieces of context. The mortal sin that Augustine weeps over, as you've likely already surmised, is the sin of liking music a little too much. I'm simplifying this because I'm hilarious. However, even without such a simplification, this quote still manages to be perplexing. Perplexing, yes, but not uncommon. Just an aside here, what I'm discussing today, this fear of music and this threatening quality of it, is not actually all that uncommon in other spheres of history. I'm just choosing to focus on early Christianity today because it's a very broad topic. To further understand Augustine's agony over his love of song, it is imperative to delve into the history of music in Christianity and its perceived threat to divinity. Perhaps I may even return to pre-Christian philosophy, as music's perceived threat to morality has been present long before the Church. I will do so through a philosopher that some have even referred to as a sort of proto-Christian, that being Plato. The Republic is a Socratic text in which Plato, through Socrates, bear with me, reasons notions of justice and injustice. It is in Book 3 that Plato argues music's direct impact on the moral fabric of society, stating, "Musical innovation is full of danger to the state. For when modes of music change, the fundamental laws of the state always change with them." This somewhat foreboding sentence suggests that music may have the power to disrupt entire states, changing the very nature of their being along with the people within them. His anxieties around musical innovation may imply that for Plato, music was far from a neutral art form. It could shape character, either elevating or corrupting its listener. This concept echoes throughout early Christianity's fear of music leading to sinful behavior. Now, Plato did recognize the positive aspects of music, saying, "The affairs of music ought somehow to terminate in the love of the beautiful." Despite this acknowledgement of music's ability to encourage its listeners to appreciate beauty and foster moral and aesthetic virtues, Plato still demands a censorship of music. In this quote, Plato states, "We must prohibit music that enervates and softens, for music should imitate the speech and actions of a brave man." Much like Plato, early Christian thinkers grappled with the dual nature of music. It was both a force that could elevate the soul to divine submission or drag it down into carnal indulgence. St. Augustine, for example, famously confessed his struggles with the pleasures of music, fearing that it might take him away from God. A sentiment rooted in the Platonic idea that unregulated art might corrupt moral order. In speaking on early attempts to regulate music, I've been using an unspoken definition. I've allowed for you, the audience, to explore these ideas through your own pre-existing notions of music, as well as speaking from my own biases around defining such a practice. Though I'm sure you and I share a similar, more universal definition, redefining this term through Boethius's framework may be necessary to fully grasp how early Christian thought categorized and evaluated music. His distinctions clarify the moral and philosophical concerns surrounding music's influence, making these definitions an essential lens to understanding Augustine's anxieties. This Roman philosopher of the early 6th century was a bridge between classical and medieval thought. Best known for his work The Consolation of Philosophy, Boethius sought to translate as much Greek philosophy as was possible, even having wished to translate Plato's entire body of work. Unfortunately, this did not come to fruition, but Plato's influence on this 6th century philosopher was evident through Boethius's understanding of the relationship between art, science, and the divine. Boethius would go on to define music as existing in 3 distinct forms. Musica mundana, or the music of the spheres. This may be familiar to you if you're familiar with Pythagoras' works. This music was not actually audible and was to be understood rather than heard. Musica humana, or the harmony of the human body, and spiritual harmony. And musica instrumentalis, instrumental music. The latter, musica instrumentalis, is the primary form of music that is being scrutinized here. It is the only musical form out of the 3 that is not innate and is instead produced entirely by man. While musica mundana and musica humanas are considered more intrinsic forms of music, musica instrumentalis is considered to be man-made music. It is a human expression that, in Boethius's view, should align with the 2 more fundamental forms of music. He thought musica instrumentalis should serve divine purposes rather than mere entertainment. What Plato rightfully said can likewise be understood. The soul of the universe was joined together according to musical concord. For when we hear what is properly and harmoniously united in sound, in conjunction with that which is harmoniously coupled and joined together within us, and are attracted to it, then we recognize that we ourselves are put together in its likeness. For likeness attracts, whereas unlikeness disgusts and repels. From this cause, radical transformations in character also arise. A lascivious disposition takes pleasure in more lascivious modes, or is often made soft and corrupted upon hearing them. This passage from Boethius's De Institutione Musica reflects an agreement with the Platonic idea of music as a moral influence. He asserts that our connection with musica mundana, or the music of the spheres, is not only rational, but necessary. When Boethius refers to lascivious music or a lascivious disposition, he is directly tying music to sexuality. We can see in this passage that, like Plato, Boethius believes that those who indulge in more lascivious or sexual modes of music are made weak members of society that don't serve God and their communities in the way he believes they must. The connection between the demonization of sexuality and sexual expression and the demonization of music runs deeply through almost all religious critiques of song. I'll provide another quote from Boethius, as he has so many and I find them so funny. Since the human race has become lascivious and impressionable, it is taken up totally by representational and theatrical modes. Music was indeed chaste and modest when it was performed on simpler instruments. But since it has been squandered in various promiscuous ways, it has lost its measure of dignity and virtue, and, having almost fallen into a state of disgrace, it preserves nothing of its ancient splendor. Here we read Boethius reflect on a time when music was less promiscuous. I believe this reference to promiscuity refers both to song and sexuality. There's an irony in this perspective as it relates back to St. Augustine's fear of music. One of my favorite quotes happens to be from St. Augustine and roughly translates to, "Lord, grant me chastity and temperance, but not yet." What a diva! Ultimately, this fear towards more promiscuous forms of music reflects a broader fear of more generalized modes of expression. This battle that is often spoken about as a battle of restraint seems to be more of a battle of repression. What Augustine, Plato, and Boethius feared was not just music, but the way it makes us feel, the way it bypasses logic and hits us directly in the gut. They feared that by giving in to the beauty of music, we might lose control. But maybe the tragedy isn't that music tempts us. Maybe it's that we keep trying to resist it. Thank you as always for tuning in and watching me ramble on about whatever I want to talk about. It means a lot when people stick around. I hope that this video serves as a jumping off point for further research. There is so much to do with this topic that I was not able to cover, and I really encourage people to do further research on it. It is endlessly fascinating. Anyways, that's all for now. Thank you, and bye!